Death. It's what ultimately links us all. Despite differences in race, creed, class, or even species, the fact remains, the same fate awaits every one of us. Yes, that means even this little birdie is going to die. Another commonality that we all share, though seemingly much more mundane, is the fact that we must eat in order to survive. Though it may seem that eating and death have little in common considering one is done to sustain life and the other is the inevitable end, that is where we end up being wrong.
So, in order to get to the bottom of this, I've decided to speak to somebody who is an expert on the subject. And who else better than somebody who deals with how we all end it?
That's why I've decided to meet with Patrick Hannon. He's the owner of Sunset's Funeral Home and has been in the business for over 20 years. Hopefully, he may be able to give me some insight as to what's been happening.
First of all, I want to thank you for taking the time out to meet with me today.
Of course.
So, what can you tell me about what's been going on? I've heard that people are opting away from traditional services.
Yes, you're right. Unfortunately, it's been that way for a number of years now.
Well, I kind of noticed off some of the online ads that you had that the prices were a little, should you say, meager compared to what I would expect.
That's putting it lightly.
Well, tell me, why do you think there's been such a drop-off in your business these days?
It's not just mine. Other funeral halls have all been suffering. I'm the only one that's left in a 30-mile radius. Business has been so bad that I've had to fire my embalmer. I hated to tell them that, but people don't need to be embalmed any longer.
Wait, what?
You heard right. People are not getting embalmed anymore.
Why?
It has to do with all the preservatives and things that are being added to our food supplies.
Well, what do you think they've been doing otherwise then?
Well, they're certainly not burying them.
If average people had not been burying their loved ones after they die, I had to find out what people have been doing as an alternative. After some long periods of research and data gathering, I came across someone who was willing to discuss their experience. Enter Marie Drury, a 24-year-old college student and part-time bartender. She was willing to discuss with us what happened to her brother a few years ago on the job as a landscaper. She explained to us that he fell victim to what could only be described as a tragic lawn gnome accident. Well, I didn't want to ask about that any further. Regardless of that, we're here to find out how she handled his passing. I couldn't help but notice the young gentleman in the corner of the room over there.
Oh, yeah, that's my brother.
How long have you kept him there?
About 6 months. I had him as a lamp over there for a while.
I wasn't meaning over there. I was meaning how long have you had him in the house?
About 3 years now. He had some accident on the job. I've had him here ever since.
Well, don't you think a photo would be a little bit more conventional?
Nah, people have pictures of everything these days. They really don't have as much meaning as they did in the past.
Ah, I see. So having him back in the corner would be a lot more meaningful then.
Absolutely. Even though he's stationary, he still helps out a lot around here.
Aside from being a coat rack or a lamp?
Uh-huh. He's actually a huge hit with my guests.
Really?
Yeah, he's always the life of the party. I kind of got a little jealous, so I guess that's why I moved him over there to be a coat rack instead of a lamp.
It was a lampshade, wasn't it?
How'd you know?
Just a hunch. But anyways, what made you decide to keep him instead of burying him?
Well, it all started with this paper I wrote in high school about a local news story about a guy who went missing for several years, and they ended up finding his body in a ditch.
Charming.
I know, right? Well, when they found him, there wasn't any signs of decay, even though he had been dead for a while.
Wait, none?
None. Well, except for some weather damage. But there were some odd details with the autopsy.
It was the preservatives in his body. For lack of a better term, his internal organs were mummified. There were talks about what they were going to do with his body, but nothing could be done.
How do you figure nothing?
After the test results came back, the EPA wanted to take a look at him. They determined that he is an environmental hazard because of the chemicals in his body. They wouldn't let us bury him.
And that's why I decided to keep him. Plus, with the cost of funerals, I can afford to pay for that on what I make.
Well, that's understandable, but what about his preservation? What did he eat?
Well, anything some broke 20-something-year-old would eat.
Which would consist of?
Microwave dinners, ramen, oh, and beer.
Thus, the beer can in his hand, I see. So, are you the only one you know that keeps around dead family members?
No, actually, my parents keep Grandma and Grandpa around for the holidays. I've seen both of them used in advertisements.
Wait, advertising?
Yeah, since you can't really put up flyers or anything, I've seen both people and businesses use them in the same way they use sign spinners.
I see.
Well, she does make a valid point. When I was on my way to the house for the interview, I do remember seeing somebody using a decedent to hold up a garage sale sign.
Since we haven't been interring many people anymore, I began seeing them everywhere. Using them for advertising is the worst.
Well, can you tell me why you feel this way?
Because I think it's horribly disrespectful. I don't understand why anybody would even ask a question like that.
No. I'm just wanting to know your opinion because you're an expert in the field and I wanted to know what you thought.
All right, you want to know what I think? It just makes me sick to think that this is how much people value their loved ones. The potential of people going to cemeteries to rob them for potential ad space is wrong.
I can see your point.
What he said struck me. Why would someone want to dig up the deceased at this point for that? The answer came to me in a flash. Looking at the statistic of how much more people eat these days compared to the portion sizes of the past, and all of the chemicals that are added into the foods we consume, and the result being the lovely addition to Marie's home, I decided to conduct a little experiment. It will require two people who died at the same ages and under similar circumstances, but from two different eras. First, we'll look at a 65-year-old man who passed away in 1959. I did have some suspicions as to what to expect. I thought about them even more on the drive over. Needless to say, I've made much better decisions. The next subject will be a 65-year-old woman that passed away in 2009. I was able to obtain permission to exhume her, but the family declined when asked for an interview. Regardless of that, I'm curious as to what I will find despite what happened with the last one. Thankfully, I remember to go to this one on an empty stomach.
I dug her up as you requested. You'll be quite surprised by what you see.
Well, thanks, but what do you mean?
Well, you have to see for yourself.
Dude, what the fuck? This isn't who I asked for.
The tombstone said 1944 to 2009. That's the one.
Dude, this doesn't look like a 65-year-old woman. Dude, what's this?
Holy shit, she's moving.
Dude, you're right.
Fuck. You assholes, get back here! Ah!
The intrinsic connection between how we sustain life and how we handle death are now more connected than they ever have been. Not only has it changed an industry that we will all eventually come to rely on, it has changed the very way that many live their lives. As of now, death as we knew it no longer exists. Humanity has ended its long search for immortality. It didn't come through a fountain or from a spiritual book, but from a value meal.